How you doing, Drew?
Yeah, good on you, man.
Yeah, ready for another week?
I know. Halfway through January already, man, but it's awesome.
No,
I've,
don't remind
I've,
me. I feel like I've got nothing done so far this year.
well, at least there's a quiet week of events, which is good, and it starts ramping up from next week. So we've got some breathing space, man. But it feels
Yeah,
so far, damn. I must say, like, what's today, Monday? Just last weekend, today, things are happening, things are moving. The right meetings are happening, deals are happening. So I'm super excited about 2022 and what has got in store. So let's see what happens. And I know there's going to be a lot of disruption. Is that the right word, or some changes in the property market with the new PPA coming out from the 1st of February? Have you seen that article, Dave?
yeah. I mean, I've been following PPA for a while. It was good to sort of see it come up fairly suddenly and become a thing to talk about again because we were talking about it mid last year already, and then it sort of just slid under the rug, and now all of a sudden, in what,
Yeah,
2 weeks, next
yeah,
Tuesday after next, like we got 2 weeks and
yeah.
this thing is in place. So
I thought it was going to be like later in the year. Hey, when I spoke to someone a few months ago, like, no, you're talking June, July. We're talking February now, right? And getting this thing in motion. So now all the attorneys are running around, and how we're going to handle this. Because before, if you think about it, the State Agent Affairs Board they govern the estate agents. Now we're talking about brokers. Now we're talking about commercial agents. Anyone that's earning anyone that's playing in that space. And I know in that article, David actually mentions all the industries in there, which is quite interesting. And making sure you've got your trust account, your Fidelity Fund certificate. So yeah,
yeah,
it's going to make it more difficult, right?
100%. But it's cool. Let's chat about that in a couple of minutes. Let's go through some of the formalities. Guys, if you're here in the chat box, just let us know that you're here. Let us know where you're watching from. And yeah, if you have any questions, Andrew and I will only answer questions a little bit later once we've discussed a few things. But start putting those questions in, and I'll keep track of them, and then Drew and I can hit them. Um,
Awesome.
Maybe just from my side to cover my formalities. There's nothing happening this week. It's great.
Nice and
Um,
quiet.
we we got coffee chat today and absolutely nothing else. We really kick into full gear next week though. We'll have our hopefully last online networking event next week Wednesday. So that's happening on Wednesday from the usual 6:30 till late. We've got Donna Bonzaya and Bulalo coming on board to talk about student accommodation, and we're essentially going to be discussing is student accommodation a viable strategy for the year. We'll also speak to some finance people, see how they're looking at, see how their appetite to lend against student accommodation is doing. So that's going to be a really exciting one. Make sure you've been registered for professional and intermediate members. Just check your emails and you'll have the registration links. So that's that one coming up, and
Yeah.
then
And I
uh,
think, Dave, just going back to that event you were
yeah,
talking about next Wednesday, the 26th, Donna Bunzai, if you don't know him, he's been investing since 2007. He's got a lot of property knowledge, especially in the student accommodation sector. So if you have any interest at all, if there's anyone that you want to listen to, it's Donna and Malalo, who just won the most growth. No, big leagues, Dave. Most growth, big leagues.
big
An
leagues.
investor of the year. So these guys have got years and years and years of experience. And Dave, there's always, like, even last year, now this year, I'm still getting people asking, should I get into student accommodation? Is it still viable? Some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. Can you all let us know? Do you feel and do you think that student accommodation should be a sector that you all invest in? Give me a comment in the chat box. Yes, Andrew, we should all be investing in student accommodation, or no? And if yes, tell us why. And if no, tell us why. Because I think it's a very hot topic at the moment. So let's see what you all have to say on that. Who's joined us? We have Kerry Lee. Kerry Lee from
Sure.
YouTube, I think.
Yeah, Curly's on YouTube with Yaku Roots joining, one of our regulars. Good to see you. Zamasomi, I think you're new. Maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself, coming from Joburg. Henry is
Gerald.
on. Good to see you, Henry. Got Gershwin. Gershwin, it takes me more than 3 hours to reply to an email sometimes. I'm sorry. I will reply to your email when I get to emails later today.
Good to see you, Gershon, all the way from Cape Town, and Ridwan. Hey, Ridwan, how's it going in Cape Town? Are you doing any new deals, Ridwan? Let us know, man. Okay,
Cool.
so quite a few people on there, which is awesome.
And then just one other event I want to discuss for next week. There is a support webinar on Thursday, but we'll discuss more next week. And then Drew, on the 29th, you're hosting a bit of a half day workshop from about 9 until 2. What are we covering there? What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Who are we inviting to that
Yeah,
one?
so that webinar on Saturday morning is not for everyone, right? I would say it's for people that are brand new to the Sapin network. It's a Sapin one day. It's people, if you're a free member of Sapin or you're a foundation member, then the webinar's for you. If you're an intermediate or professional member, then the webinar's not for you. And Dave, I'll be covering some of the basics and advanced strategies from where do we go find these below market value deals. It's a great opportunity. And when we do find them, what strategy do you apply? Do we apply the rent to rent, the installment sale agreement? Do we buy it outright? How do we buy that property? So finding deals, negotiating, a very common question we always get from beginners and people who have bought a few properties is the business and tax. How do you actually set up and run a profitable business? And then another common issue that people have is financing. So I'm going to be running through some property funding solutions, just giving you some great ideas and great tips on how to finance properties in this market. If it's a repossessed property versus a private sale versus sale and execution, depending on what type of where the property comes from, depends on how that OTP looks, depends on how I want to finance that specific property transaction. Dave, the good news is there's no cost to anyone. As I said, if you're an intermediate or professional member, it's not for you. But hey, if you're brand new to our network and you want to see what we're about, at the beginning of the year, so I said to Dave, I'll put it on just for about 5 hours. I'll give you some downloadables. We'll have some fun. So yeah, man, it's going to be a great day. And that's 2 Saturdays away, I believe. A week on
Yeah,
Saturday.
that's the 29th. So that'll be one of the last times we can talk about the Estate Agent Affairs
Yeah.
Board.
Jeez, crazy, eh? Good
You're
old
gonna have to update some
EAB.
slides.
Yeah. Busy working on that now. So for the newbies, let us know if you want to join. Um, and then, yeah, should we get into the Practitioners Act, Property Practitioners Act?
Yeah, I think that covers the admin. So, guys, just as a frame of reference, the PPA article that Drew and I are going to be referring to is this one from Business Day, so Business Tech. Um, at the end of the day, it's not the ultimate resource, but it does a link to the actual Property Act, which I do suggest you go and take a look at. I know it's a 90-page document, but try and read through it, print it out, put it next to the couch, and instead of watching TV, have the TV on and just read through it. It'll
Yeah.
take you a while. But Drew, I guess in short, the first question that people are going to be asking is, do they need to register as property practitioners? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I mean, yeah, look, there's a list here of if you become a commercial property broker, you want to get into bonds, home inspectors, homeowners associations, companies selling timeshare, fractional title, property managers, they all and more, they're all going to fall under the act. If they all fall under the act, you're going to have to get your fidelity fund certificates, especially if you're earning commissions as a brokerage. So, if you're earning from the seller, if you're charging the buyer front, you're going to have the fidelity fund certificate, and it's going to have to be renewed every single year. And anyone is allowed to ask for that certificate. That's what they're saying over here.
Yeah.
And they go into property defects, new board of authority, consumer protection. There's quite a lot involved. And as I
Yeah.
said, Bruno's going to be putting it together for us.
Yeah, so I think for me, it hasn't really changed who should be worried about it. At the end of the day, if you're going to be generating income off of a property transaction on a property that you don't own, that's when you need to worry about it. That's when you need to be a registered property practitioner. So if you're a landlord and you've got your own property and your own tenants, PPA is not going to apply to you necessarily. Some of the new inspection things and checklists, that's going to apply. But if you're not like flipping houses for other people and you're not trying to earn commissions, then you're probably not going to have to worry about being registered as a property practitioner,
Yeah.
unless you start getting into property developments, that sort of space.
And it says here the act defines a property practitioner is someone that's included in in the sale of a property. If you're purchasing a property, if you're letting a property, if you're renting a property, if you're financing a property, if you're marketing a property. I mean, Dave, I think that's the question. So, Dave, if I go buy my own property and I want to sell that property, question is, do I need to register? If I'm doing it on someone's behalf and in commission, the answer is absolutely yes. There's going to be disclosure forms that everyone must sign. All parties have to sign a disclosure form.
Yeah. So that's the change I'm really excited to see. Property defects, disclosing those. I mean, it's something that I've generally practiced anyway. Just here's a list of known defects that we know about the property. Just disclosing that, it helps with the whole footnotes clauses. So it's one of those things that will now be mandatory. If you're selling a property, and I'd even argue if you're leasing a property, you're going to have to provide an official document saying this is what is wrong with the property, and just putting that information up. So it's really to cover the sort of Consumer Protection Act and sort of the footnotes clauses. It's really to deal with those. That's what's important there.
Exactly. And they're saying property practitioners must also open and keep one or more separate trust accounts, appoint an auditor, provide them with all information regarding to trust accounts and who the auditors are, deposit all trust money into the relevant trust account, and keep
Yeah.
separate accounting records. So, Dave, I think I've seen this kind of thing happen overseas. And one of the positives, so one of the negatives is it might be a bit more admin, a bit more of a headache to actually get it all done, but it's also going to keep the riffraff away from the property space. People that think they just want to come in and make a quick buck, or people that, just can come in and pull the wool over people's eyes. It's going to make it harder for them to actually get into the property space, which that can be seen as a negative, but there's a big positive as well, right?
100%. And look, it's one of those things. It's for an entrepreneur, it's a slightly higher barrier to entry. But if you want to become a estate agent or a lettings agent, those barriers were already in place. I think the people who want to get into property inspections, they're the ones that are going to feel this. So those are the guys who put those barriers really in the place of. Um, and then homeowners association, if you do run a HOA, if you're a chair on that, then you've got some compliance to deal with over there. But for the most part, I'm with you, Drew. It's more formal. It's legislation hurts in the short term, but generally it's out there to protect everyone involved. Sometimes it's there to make sure that we pay our taxes.
Yeah,
But that's
exactly.
just part
Yeah,
of it. But those requirements are pretty much the same. They were always there if you were an estate agent in terms of fidelity fund certificates, those sort of things. The only
yeah,
variation is some of them. If you're handling other people's money, that's it. But,
yeah,
um,
exactly. Yeah.
so Kerry's asking if this will apply to rent to rent. Kerry, in my opinion, not. Um, because of rights of ownership on a rent to rent, essentially I get the right to sublet that property in my personal capacity. So I'm not managing that property for that person. If I was a lettings agent and I found a tenant for them and I pulled a commission, that's when it would apply. But in a rent to rent scenario, I would argue it doesn't apply. We can always find that to Bruno to weigh in, but that's generally how we've considered it because I have the right to that property and then I sublease that property. That means that I'm generally exempt from Fidelity Fund and historically EAB regulations. So, and I don't think PPA will change that.
And I think what would be good for our members is if you could all think of questions around this. As I said, I'm actually busy WhatsApping Bruno as we do this chat, and he's busy preparing pretty much a full event just around this. If you have any questions, ask us now. Dave will copy and paste and send it to Bruno. And we'll let you know when that event's going to happen because you're all in property or you all want to get into property. You need to know where you stand, where you're going to property. Some people just want to, keep it simple, buy some off plans or buy some multi-lets. And other people are becoming agents, they're becoming sourcing agents, they're starting to rent property out. That definitely applies to you. And if it applies to you, you need to understand the legalities of this. So please, right now, all think of a relevant question. Sai, I know you asked us to put an event for this event. Or for the subject. It's exactly what we're doing. So please, all questions, pop them through, and we will get Bruno to answer them for you. We won't necessarily answer the questions right now because Bruno will be the expert at it. And there is the link. Dave did post the link on there. If you scroll down, you'll see it. And just remember, ladies and gents, I've noticed I've noticed some new names, Dave. If you just jumped on, this is Dave and Andrew's Coffee Chat, 1 o'clock every Monday. We go live. Some Mondays we have guests, some Mondays we don't. It's all about property, what's happening in our property portfolio. More importantly, what's happening with yours? Where are you? Where are you getting stuck? If you need help, if you're going to be connected, just shout. And we will, and because there's so many events across the year, Dave runs us through what events are happening this week and next week. So we'll keep you up to date every single week. For those of you that have any colleagues right now, friends or family that you know are interested in property, can you tag them right now for us? Just go into your Facebook or your YouTube there and just tag a friend in and get them to join every single Monday at 1 o'clock. Cool, Dave.
100%.
While they're busy giving us, while they are busy sending through questions, should we chat about something else, or do you want to give a recap of events or answer any questions that are there?
No, there's a good question from Denzel that I think we can bash over. Denzel's wondering if the new laws will affect sourcing agents. My answer is technically no, it's not going to affect sourcing agents because nothing's changing. You still have to be compliant with FFC and EAB regulations, and those regulations are now just under a different name. But you still have to do the same stuff. You still have to follow and jump through the same hoops. So nothing really is changing for estate agents from a practical perspective. Nothing really changes. Obviously, the one nuance on that is the inspection stuff. You'll now have to handle those inspection documents as a sourcing agent and make sure that those are happening. So
yeah,
you.
so I
But
think,
we've always
Dave,
said as a sourcing agent, you need your EAB or NCO
yeah,
4 or 5.
and I think maybe that's where that question came from, because there's a lot of individuals that didn't know that or don't know that if you're a sourcing agent sourcing a put it this way, it's a very gray area, right? There's a couple of ways around it, but it's a very gray area. And that's what we always teach. If you want to sell property and earn commission, you've got to do it the right way. You've got to be trained up. You've got to get your FFC. So for those, Dave, those individuals that do have that in place, there won't be any changes for them. It'll be the same. So I agree with you on that. Zama is saying that you'd like to join me next Saturday. Absolutely, Zama. There is a link there that you can click on and you can register and you can join us next Saturday. Be awesome to have you on there. Beatrice, good to see you. Sure.
There's a very long question over there.
Sure.
I'm just going to respond to someone.
Yeah, we're just busy reading some of the questions.
Maybe we'll read that one. Babawa, yes, we've got property mentors and property coaches at the Property Academy. Please feel free to drop an email to Alani, or you can go check out some of our events. Babawa, if you're getting started in property, that's what the workshop on the 29th is for. And I strongly recommend you might want to join that if you're just getting your toes wet.
And it will be virtual, so it doesn't matter where you are. Babalwa, just click the link. Join me next Saturday at 9 o'clock. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday. Okay, let me read this long question here.
Andrew, I'll leave you to finish reading that question. I'll answer someone else's question while you go through that. Michael's asking, what were the benefits of me buying property in CC versus establishing a P2I limited and buying it in the company, especially if you look at a buy and flip profits, estimating 4 million in 12 months. So Michael, one, not a tax attorney, can't give you proper tax advice, but for one, CCs versus limited companies, we're assuming, and for the most part, we pretend like CCs don't exist. Most old CCs now behave like P2I limiteds. You can't establish a new one, not since 2007 or 3. It's been very, very long. So CCs are pretty much gone. The reason I buy in limited companies is for risk isolation and for tax management. If it's in a limited company, that means I don't own the shares. My trust owns the shares to that limited company. And it also means that from a tax perspective, I have a lot easier chance to do deductibles, or I can distribute the money how I want. I can take the money as a salary. I can take the money as dividends. I can take the money to repay a seed loan that I gave the limited company when I started it. So at the end of the day, for me, it's a very detailed conversation. I strongly suggest having a chat with someone like Shilly Boy. I'll put a link in the chat box in a sec. But it's not a sort of simple conversation. But at the end of the day, strongly suggest it. Personally, I do like to do all my properties in limited companies because it just gives me that protection that I like. And from a tax perspective, I can be more efficient than in my personal name. Also, yeah, death tax is obviously one of those things. If I happen to own a property in my personal name and pass away, then there's estate duty and all the kinds of things that make things really messy. But do reach out to Shilly Boy at Intergen. Really important that you get proper professional advice. We are not professionals. Slight variation on that. Drew, how did that question look? I read some of it.
Cool, last one.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. So basically, At was saying, so At is on the SA fundamental course. We find 95% of people that do come through our network do the fundamentals, right? Understanding all the elements of property investing, and At's been viewing a few properties, of which one I think they were saying they made offer of 500,000. It's on the market for 570. At reckons the house values 800K. So at, please reply straight away. Why do you think the value is 800? Is it 800 after renovation? Is it 800 on purchase? So if you're paying 500 right now, do you believe that the property is worth 800? Because if that's the case, the agents have really undervalued the asking price. Or if you pay 500 after you spend the money on the renovation, will it be worth 800? Tell me, how did you come up with the valuation? Did you look at for sale prices? Did you just look at sold price on the internet? Did you download a Lightstone report? Did you download a TPN report? Let me know what level of due diligence and how and why you think it's worth 800. Because Dave, from my experience, if a house right now is worth 800,000, it's properly in the market. If the asking price is 570 and 800 is the current market value, it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right that the asking price is so way under. It's like 20-30% under, isn't it? Under market
Yeah.
value already on the asking price. But it could be that I'd say, yeah, but listen, once I've done a new kitchen, new bathroom, lick of paint, then yes, then maybe the house may be worth. But the only way to really find out is to do is to do a like for like comparable, and the tool we use is Lightstone. Are you an intermediate member? Because if you are intermediate or professional, as you do know, you do get Lightstone reports included in your membership. Just going to have a look here.
Yeah. And if you're on the
And for,
fundamentals course, you can also join us at the support webinar next week, Thursday.
yeah, because that's at the point now where she's got to sign the OTP, and this is where people get it wrong. So make sure that when you do your offer to purchase, that it's subject to certain things, subject to getting finance at 100% loan to value at the prime interest rate. We had a situation end of last year where a brainy person on the network, before he joined the network, put an offer to purchase and subject to finance. He got finance, but not the finance he wanted. So he decided to pull out of the deal. A long story short, they sued him for agent's commission, which was 80,000 Rand, and then negotiated it down to 25,000. But he still paid 25,000 Rand because he got the offer to purchase wrong. If you believe there's any defects, any structural cracks, any damp, have you looked for all of that? If you believe there's anything that could be serious, it's subject to the outcome of a survey, subject to a proper inspection by ABCD. We just get the right wording to ensure, because you may get the finance, you may get 100% at prime, but now there's a defect or there's something wrong with the property. So depending on the state of the property and the condition and how you want to finance, it depends on what goes in the OTP. And again, Dave, this is the reason why last year, when we redid our professional membership, we threw OTP support in, where you get direct access to property attorneys asking advice on all the different ways of structuring an OTP. That's only if you are a professional member. And if you haven't done the OTP course yet, speak to us, go to Alani, go to the website and upskill yourself. But initially, from my side, try use your own OTP, try use your own one, use your own terms and conditions. As long as they're reasonable and you protect it. Remember, you've always got to be able to get out of a deal unless you're 110% sure nothing's going to go wrong. Dave, would you say any different or anything additional?
Yeah, I think the one thing I want to add on here is I was reading through it, and there's a lot of talk about pushing the price up. One of the common mistakes that investors make is they have the idea that they can go and buy a property at 500,000, invest 150,000 on new kitchens, and then magically the property is worth 900. I just use numbers close to yours. I'm not exactly talking about your specific deal. If the market doesn't support it, you can't do that. If the highest market comparable is 700, you could put in jacuzzis, you could put a helicopter pad in. It doesn't make it more valuable. The market is the market, so you can't drive the market like that. That's why we generally say buy below market value and then make it worth it. It's very difficult to force appreciation on a property nowadays, especially in South Africa with just an aesthetic cleanup. You really need to be looking at extending the property, adding on features. So if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't change, the way I like to explain it to my coaching students is if you look at the listings on private property or Prop 24, You look at the summaries, there's high level information. It's like number of rooms, number of bathrooms, garages. If it doesn't change those basic features, it's not going to force appreciation. So putting in a fresh kitchen might help it sell faster, but it's not necessarily going to make it worth more than it was when you paid for it. Especially because some savvy estate agents and some savvy property buyers, they will want to know what did it sell for and when did it sell for. So if they see that you bought it for 600 6 months before they're buying it and they can't see a marked improvements, then they're going to really challenge you on that purchase price. So be absolutely sure of that end value. That is the most important number that you need to be working on as a property investor. What is that property going to be worth at the end of it? And be conservative and be aggressive to make sure that you're not being overly optimistic.
Yeah, and that's a big risk, right? When getting to properties, are you flipping at, are you refinancing, are you letting? But you're on module 6, so you've still got 6 modules to go. So you'll find as you go through those modules and you cover OTP and all that, it'll all start to make more sense for you. But
Yeah.
like Dave said, we do have a support webinar next week. But I understand that you have a situation right now. Just ensure you've read through that contract and highlight anything you don't understand, and then reach out for support. There's the TPA, the Property Academy's fundamental Facebook group is there for support as well. And then just reach out. So I'm not quite sure what your OTP says at the moment. If we saw it, we could help a lot quicker. But well done in getting out there, viewing properties there, Ati, and putting offers out there. Just don't sign anything until you're 100% confident. Um,
Awesome. Few more questions.
Linda Cooler
Uh,
had one from the fundamentals.
gone a little earlier. Prepaid meter is prepaid meter electricity. That's the coverage is always less. Recoup bills. Is this something normal? So what essentially is happening is here you got a multi-let property with a prepaid meter, but the amount of meters, the amount of electricity your tenants are loading, or it's not the same that you're paying. So you got to understand it depends on how your meters were installed. There are going to be some things that are common usage generally. So as landlords, you're generally responsible for, gate motors, external lighting, common area lights, those sort of things. So it depends on your wiring, really. So go get whoever installed your prepaid meters in, ask them the questions. Your prepaid service providers, they're the ones that are going to be able to answer that. In my opinion, that looks fairly normal because there's always going to be some electricity that's responsible for the
Mm,
landlord to pay for. Simple as that.
yeah. And Dave, actually, my letting agent had a meeting this morning. So the way I do mine at the moment is I top up the main municipality meter, and I've got prepayment meters in all the bedrooms, and the tenants buy the electricity off of me. So I look at how much do I top up every month, and how much do I get back, and something's not making sense there. I always feel like I've been thinking has it been rigged from next door? Is someone plugging the electricity in? Because in the communal areas, I've cut all the points off. I've done everything I can to ensure that no one can be using the communal electricity. Obviously, there's light switches and stuff, but I've just picked up that what's going out is not coming back in. So now I've got exactly what you said. My letting agent had a meeting with the prepayment company this morning, and they've picked up that something is wrong. So now they're requesting our council tax bills. They're going to query it, but the first thing they ask for is the council bill. Look at
Yeah.
the rate you are and all of that.
Um, one of the funny things that happened to me. So obviously, common areas similar to you, we reduced the amount of plugs in the space. There's boilers, there's the kitchen's one thing, but what we had found is the tenants were unplugging the TV, which already like unplug the TV in a multi-let, and you're gonna get a fight with someone. But they unplugged the TV to run an electric heater. Why? Don't know.
Yeah, no, it
So,
happens,
but
eh?
it's one of those things that you either find weird things like that happening, or it could be that rate mismatch where the council's charging you more per kilowatt hour than you're charging your tenants.
Exactly. Okay, I'm just asking Ati, what are they struggling with Larson and TPN? Is it Are they struggling with downloading it? Are you struggling with reading it? Let's find out, and we'll give you support. Eh?
Cool. On to Linda Cooley's question. They're on the fundamentals, and they say on the fundamentals, we talk about how to have a really good opportunity, to have a really good investment, you generally need two things. You need a seller who's motivated, but you also need a seller who's got equity. Because a seller without equity generally means you can't do a deal. So that's the question here. If there's motivation but no equity, does it mean there isn't a deal? Um, depends.
Yeah, so I
uh,
think, yeah, I mean, I'll take that one because I come across them all the time. The answer is
yeah,
yes, because one of the deals I did last year was exactly that. Seller was motivated, house was empty. The guy wasn't an investor; he had just got his second property, and I thought I originally wanted to flip it, but in order to flip it, I had to buy it below market value, put it back on the market, and sell it. But I wouldn't be able to when I took all the fees into consideration. So that's when I looked at the installment sale agreement, going, well, this could work as a multi-let. In fact, I can build flats in the back. So I thought, let me offer this guy the full market value, but I'm only going to buy it in 5 years' time. And in the
yeah,
5 years, I'll get power of attorney. I'll change the zoning. I'll do all of that. I'll then go build the flats at the back. So the answer is yes to some of the deals. Look, sometimes you go view a property. The seller's very motivated. Probably the properties may be run down. There's no equity. Sometimes the answer is no from an investment point of view, and you have to walk away. But this is why David and I feel strongly about you understanding all the different elements of property investing. How do you structure seller financing? How do you do installment sale agreements? How do you do back-to-back deals? How do you create the JVs? How do you rezone? There's so many different facets to property investing. And the more you can learn when you're at that property going, straight away you'll pick it up. Okay, we've got a motivated seller. If there's equity, what are the strategies? If there's no equity, what are the strategies? And sometimes you go, do you know what? I've explored all the different options. This isn't going to work for me. And you walk away from the deal.
100%.
Cool.
And yeah, that's it for me. The only place that I can see that opportunity is either on an ISA or like an assisted sale structure where you need to put that equity in there. You need to build it. So, like Drew, in your example, you're building flats, you're adding massive value to that property, and you're adding massive income potential to that property, and that's why you can do the deal. But if it's an apartment, there's pretty much not much you can do, no matter how desperate that seller is. If there's no equity, there's a very little chance that you can buy an apartment, force appreciation, do something to drive the value. You might be able to do something with an ISA, but for the most part, I'd say you're going to have a hard time with something like that. But definitely freehold, you got a little more potential, especially if you can develop it.
Big time. Awesome. Just checking out for any other questions. I can see Clayton also replied about the rates. Check your tariffs, city council, and the meter service provider match. Very, very important. You can actually set a higher tariff to cover the communal areas. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Okay, let's
just
hop
double check
across.
your lease if you're doing that. Make sure you're not breaching the terms of your leases. But
Perfect.
yeah, half past. What I'll do quickly, Drew, is I'll do another recap of our events that are coming up, and then we can see if there's any final questions. And if not, we can give it a call.
Awesome. Let's do it.
So fairly easy this week. We don't really have any events this week, so what we're focusing on is next week. Next week we've got two major events I want to talk to you guys about. Like we said, hopefully the last online networking event. This means we'll be transitioning to in-person networking events from Feb onwards. But next week Wednesday, so this is Wednesday the 26th from 6:30 until late. We'll be talking about is student accommodation a viable strategy for 2022. Keynotes being run by Donna Bonzai, who was the 2019 Investor of the Year Award winner, and we've got Mulalo, who was the Big Leagues category winner for last year for Investor of the Year 2021. So really exciting. I know there's a lot of questions around there. I know some universities have declared that they'll be fully online for 2022. So really, really good that you guys understand exactly what's happening over there. And then
Awesome.
last but not least, Drew, you've got your half day workshop on the 29th of January.
Yeah.
Just want to maybe give us a recap for my side, guys. It's mostly for free foundation members. Really, the guys getting started in property investing. Drew and I will be taking some time to help get you on board and get you familiar with some of the fundamentals of property investments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the beginning of the year, January. So I thought for the SAPN free members and the SAPN Foundation members, really showing them all the things they need to know and to accelerate and move fast. So in terms of setting up the business, not all of you need trust. Some of you may, some of you may not. How do companies work? Looking at all the different strategies, because you can't go out there and do every single strategy. So what is the best strategy for you? Is it flipping buy to let installment sale agreements? The biggest block a lot of people have is property funding. So I want to explore a lot of thinking out the box, seller financing, how to finance properties a different way, get you thinking like a property entrepreneur. I also throw things in there like live deal analysis, negotiations. And something people struggle with is where we always talk about these deals, but where do you find them? Where does the general public not know how to find them? So, Dave, these webinars, as you know, go super fast. There's so much content. So, if you are a free or foundation member, then this event is for you. Okay.
100%.
Sweet.
Awesome, Drew. So I think that covers it, guys. I don't see any other questions, so maybe Drew and I will talk a little for a minute or two. If there aren't any other questions, then we'll call it there.
Yeah, cool, man. So Dave, something interesting happened. Remember that deal that we were doing end of last year, that lodge?
Mm-hmm.
So the
Yeah.
builder, Ricky, a really awesome guy. Shem, he had some things happen to his life and his business, but he's back on track now. A long story short, guys, I had an offer accepted, and from memory, Dave, it was 3.1 or 3.2 million,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. And there's a lot we could do with it, from Airbnb, office space, converted events. And anyway, and luckily I had my exit clauses in there. And at the end of by December, my capacity was low. The builders still hadn't got back to me despite chasing because things happened. I said, you know what? Timing's not right. So I walked away from the deal because it's okay to walk away from deals, right?
Yeah.
And Dave, that deal is back on the table, but I think it's looking like it's 400,000 Rand less than what I was going to pay for it. Maybe I'll talk about motivation. How time brings motivation. So now I'm back in communication. I've called Ricky the builder. He sorted his stuff out. He's already called the owner. They're going to go do a full electrical inspection. As you know, David's got that thatch. We're going to relook at that. And that deal, who knows if that deal's back in the store, it's back, it's live, it's a few 100,000 and cheaper. If I can negotiate down further, that's just going to be a cha-ching for us, which will be really, really awesome. So we'll see how that goes. I'll keep you all up to date on that with that, if it's going to happen or not.
Jade clearly did some really good negotiation for us in that one.
Yeah, he did, eh? Yeah, I've seen Jaden.
But because maybe a good lesson from there is at the end of the day, it was a deal that, yeah, it's 3 million in Joburg, which feels like quite a lot, but there was a lot of work to do. To get the property to the condition that we wanted, it was mainly a refurb. It was a pretty big refurb, a lot of gutting, a lot of building things, sort of like rebuilding things. So for us, that knowledge of how much is it going to cost was the most important thing. And if you can't be confident in what your building fees are going to be, if on a big project like that, then walk away. And then sometimes you can find the deal a couple months later for a discount.
And that's exactly what it was, Dave. Because if you're doing a little 3-bed house or a flat and there's a bit more electrical work, there's going to be a cap. But this is like these 3 dwellings. We're going on Airbnb to office space to building more office space, and it was just like I felt uncomfortable because I could budget 100 grand, Dave, for electrical, but that property could cost up to 250,000. And the same with the plumbing, the old plumbing pipes and all that. So that's where you're going to be careful. And I said to Simone, unless I have the confidence from the builder, and I do trust Ricky, I like Ricky, until I see a fully itemized quote and I'm comfortable with each line item and there's a buffer, then I'll go ahead with it. So that's the journey
100%.
we are now again.
Especially because we're shifting there. We're talking about commercial property. There was a commercial kitchen, so there will be 3-phase power. I've seen it. I've done 1 or 2 industrial deals, like running proper power and dealing with high voltage power and like that, like 3-phase. That alone costs 50, 60 grand per fuse, like per circuit, to like do the maintenance, bring it up to modern standards. So yeah, no, it's always good to cover your risk and just be comfortable walking away with the deal. Walking away from the deal, you just have to sometimes.
And I was gutted at the time, but it was the best thing to do. Now it's back on the table, but it's cheaper. Cha-ching.
Yeah. So if you guys ever need, just Jade's a great negotiator.
Yeah. Thank you, Jade. He went in there and stayed the night. Awesome. Let's see here.
Cool. Question from Gerald. You reading that one?
We can do it quickly.
Quick question. How tricky can seller finance be in general? Secondly, okay, so seller finance, we completely define that. Secondly, how would one determine or speculate a future property price given the current market conditions for the past 2 years? So, Drew, if you don't mind, let me take the second part of that question, and then you can maybe hit the first part, or we can both hit the first part.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
There is no good way to determine or speculate the future property or future value of anything. Bitcoin, gold, property. There's no way. You can't do it. That's why, as property investors, as coaches, Andrew and I generally advise that you invest for a decision that makes sense today, and you don't hold for speculative purposes. Some people can afford to take that knock and have that sort of cash outflow for a short period of time, especially when they're trying to do Section 13(6), those sort of things, because then your tax upsides can be really good in the long term. But for the most part, don't do a deal if you're relying on it to appreciate in value, or you're waiting for rent to go up in 2 years, or you're waiting for your bond to go down. Don't invest based
Yeah.
off of what you think might happen in the future.
Because what happens if interest rates keep going up, which they will, and what happens if a lot more people get squeezed, which they will, and what happens if there's a lot more repossessions and people losing homes, which will happen, and all of a sudden it becomes a buyer's market because there's so much selection out there, and when it becomes a buyer's market and I'm spoiled for choice, I can buy as many as I want, but I can negotiate against each seller. Property prices could drop, right? They might drop a lot, they may not drop, they may stabilize. I think it is risky in this market to go, yeah, I'm going to get 10% a year on year on capital
Mm,
growth. So I think it's going to be quite conservative on that.
100%. And then first part of the question, how tricky is seller finance in general? So when we're referring to seller finance, we're generally referring to installment sale agreements. That's our general catch-all. There are a few other ways like assisted sales. Um, for me, I don't find them too tricky because I go very heavily legal on them. I go legal first. The legal contracts stipulate and outline everything that happens in that agreement. So uh, that sort of protects me from the risk. But when you look at it as a whole or from a general perspective, the hardest thing about seller finance is you need to do business with the seller. You need to be in that business relationship with that seller for the duration of that contract. And sometimes things change for them, and sometimes they're just not honest and upfront, or sometimes they don't understand the agreement. And that's the hardest thing about it. But if you've got the right legal
Yeah.
team supporting you, for me, I think it's fine. Drew, your side?
Yeah. No, I agree, Dave. And I think seller financing, like anything in property, can be as simple or tricky as you want it to be. Obviously, it makes common sense to keep it as simple as possible. And like Dave said, most cases we're talking about installment sale agreements. Or it could be that you go buy a property for R1,000,000 and you only get 80% from the bank, and there's 20% difference, right? Where you don't need to do an installment sale agreement, but on transfer, you can set up the loan agreement. The attorney does it for you, and you agree to pay the 200,000 rand over the next 12 months, over the next 6 months, over the next 2 years. So the seller finances the 20% for you, or the 10%, whatever it might be. And that can be as simple as, I'll pay you a monthly fee, I'll pay you once every 6 months, whatever you agree with the seller. With installment sale agreements, there's a contract in place. It's not an offer to purchase, it's Section 42 contract. And you can make it as simple as you want in black and white, or you can make it as tricky as you want. But just keep it as simple as you can, obviously. That's the kind of stuff I'll be talking around on the 29th of January on that Saturday workshop as well, Dave.
100%. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about seller finance. A lot of people hear about it for the first time on workshops, which is always fun to teach them. So it's
Yeah,
a new tool in
exactly.
the
Yeah.
toolbox.
It's awesome. Okay,
Cool.
cool, Dave. That's cool, man. I hope you all enjoyed that. And if you
Yeah,
did, just remember to please tag your friend in, tag a family member in if they're keen in property. Next week, we'll be talking interest rates and lending and banks with Uber, right?
100%. I believe we're just confirming who exactly from Uber will be on, but we've got Uber planned for next week. It's always good to understand what's happening in the finance sector, especially with new year, new financial year, new tax stuff
Yeah,
happening soon. So it's important to know.
exactly. 100%, man. Okay, cool, everyone. Have a great week. Go out there and get some deals. Lidakula, yes, share it with your coach. That'll be awesome. And stay in touch, everyone. We'll see you all around.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Drew.
Okay.